All right. Welcome again, everybody. I hope you're not tired of hearing my voice yet. This is the fifth panel today, and this is a panel really aimed at developers and raising capital. But of course, it's very interesting for any immigration attorney and investors listening because they all want to know how all this is done. And we're quite honored today to have this great panel with us. I have here John Lamb from the Lamb Group. I have Amir Hasid from the HAP Group. I have Brian Ostar from the EB-5 Capital. And we have George Zhu from Century Developments. So welcome, panelists. It's a little smaller than the other panels, but I'm sure we're going to have as much to say. All right, the topic of this panel is... just read it again, sorry. Right, the topic of this panel is real-world experiences in raising EB-5 capital from the developer's perspective. This is interesting and important, and we've tried to be a little varied because we've put together two groups which are new into the EB-5 industry and two people who are more experienced and have a lot more to show in the EB-5 industry. We did not deliberately have anybody in the sort of the larger one like the last panel where you have the Durst Group and Silverstein and names like that, because I feel like sometimes that really takes away. What we want trying to do in this panel is really come out and for the layman who really wants to go out there and get investment capital, just get some real ideas on how to do it and how to move forward and what the issues are out there. It's a panel about panel members. Please feel free to join in if somebody has said something and you want to join in with their comment. That's what everybody's been doing. So don't wait to be invited. Unless you talk too much, then I'll sort of step over you. And we would like to keep some time as well for questions at the end. So I'm going to start with the people who have actually already done it. And I have here on my right side John Lamb, who has very successfully managed to raise EB-5 capital for multiple projects. John, if I start, you're starting, we always start with China, of course. So today, China is becoming, and we're hearing this from other panels, China is becoming more and more difficult. How are you finding going into the China market right now, in comparison to how you found it when we first started?
Well, I think the Chinese market is very big. It's getting more complicated with the money how to go out, the money how to raise. So, but we always find some channel to help them to do it. And I think today you go to too many projects in China. A lot of customers, they're looking for successful project. So they're looking for history. They're looking for a company, what they do before. I think that's what the customer always looking for. And that's why when we go out to raise our fund, we don't find that difficult. Every time our project always fill up. So now we have the third, fourth project and fifth project coming out. And the ratio on the year 5, we only put a very small ratio. So make that comfortable. They know we could pay them back. And also the bank appraisal, always much bigger than our cost. That's the most important thing. So when we buy this, the land, it's always buy in a very low price. We buy in 2011, 2012, and today all those costs all double up already. So that's what makes a lot of cushion for them to feel comfortable. I think you totally sell the project. You have to make the client feel comfortable. You're able to do it. You're able to create a job. You're able to, they get the green card and they get the money back. That's what you have to let them see.
John, you're absolutely correct. That's exactly what people want to see. But when you first started, for all the developers who are here and they want to go out and they get capital, what challenges did you have when you first started? How did you go and get EB-5 capital for your first project?
Well, in the first project, I found much difficult.
Yes.
Because I have no history. People said, yeah, your company, long history. You got over 40 years history, always successful. Are you able to do it? would deliver green card. So that's a challenge. That's why in the first project, we have 45 people actually. I only raised 9 people. Then I shut down. And also myself is I might do it right. I don't want to take a big chance. So I do a small one, just do a 9. Then I said, okay, enough for me. And I want to make sure this is something I could deliver to my client before I could make a big promotion. And afterward, the first project we come out very successful. Everybody getting what they want, and they're getting for it. The second project, for me, come in, I showed them I'm doing the first one very successful. So the second project, I'm sold in short period of time. The third project also sold out too. So now the 4 project coming out, and it's one of the biggest project in New York City. It's one of the top 10 development in New York City. So they look at the value. It's work for them to come in. So a lot of people want to come in, but our paperwork not finalized. Because I always want to be the loan in place, the bid in place, everything be in place before I come with the paper. That's why it takes much longer than other people. They just do a projection. I do everything actual. And that's why when people come into it, there's no question. Everything is actual numbers.
Wow, very commendable. Brian, you are from EB-5 Capital. Just in case people here don't know who EB-5 Capital are, because John Lamb being from New York, a lot of New Yorkers here know who he is. Would you like to just first of all tell everybody how many projects EB-5 Capital have done?
Sure. So we're based in Washington, D.C. We have projects in, we have regional centers in D.C., New York, California, Texas, and Portland. So those 5 areas. We're opening up our 20th project very soon. So to answer your question, Mona, it's actually gotten easier for us.
Because you are your 20th project.
Yeah,
I mean, John was trying to say.
Once
the
you
first
get
one
past,
was the hard one.
right. I mean, the first few took a while, right? It took a long time to raise money, but once you get past 4 and 5 and 6, and then 10 and 11 and 12, and then by the time you're at 20, you don't really have to answer a lot of questions like, you know, are you going to steal my money, right? Or do you know what you're doing? Like all those questions kind of get answered based on your track record. So I think it's very hard for a new group to come in. It's a very competitive market, but for us, it gets easier. Now, having said that, we have to find better and better projects each time. So we try to find projects that have a real need. Right? If a developer comes to us and they say they want to build an apartment building in, you know, Jersey City, we would say why, right? Tell me why there's a need for that in that location, and there should be some kind of interesting story or kind of marketing bit that we can use overseas to sell it to the investors. So we try to find really interesting projects. We redeveloped a it's called the Coliseum in Washington, D.C. This is where the Beatles played their first concert in America a long time ago, and it's been a vacant building for a while, and now it's an office retail in Washington, D.C. REI is the largest REI store in America. They have a lease there. So there's always some kind of interesting play that we try to find in our projects.
Thank you. Now, Brian, John, you've both successfully raised capital. Amir and George, you're both in your first projects, yes. Correct? Yes. So, Amir, well, before I ask you some questions, do you want to say a little bit about your project, and then we can talk about how you're going to raise capital for it?
I'll be more than happy. So, hi everyone. My name is Amir Chassid, and I'm the CIO and co-founder in Hap Investments. We have 12 projects in the city. And we are actually now trying to raise or working on raising EB-5 in our one of our projects, which is in 28th Street between 7 to 8 in Chelsea in prime location. And I assume that today in 2016, according to what I hear all the last year and also all this day, it's much more complicated than 2011. But I also assume that it will be harder in 2021. And as a developer, we like to explore and to invent ourselves, and I think it's very important to find some more tools in order to go ahead and develop your company.
Well, actually, Amr, I've heard this since morning that it was so much easier in 2011. I was around, very much around then.
I was not.
And I'll tell you, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, it was as difficult. It was not easy. Raising money is never easy, whether you're taking it from an investor or from a bank. I just feel that over time, because of competition, it looks people looking back and they think they did less work, but they really didn't.
I think that you are right on the first project and the track record that you are talking about it, because it's always hard to raise money for your first project. Doesn't really matter whether it's equity, senior loan, or EB-5.
Right.
So it's another step that you need to do in order to go ahead.
Right, right. George, you're also on your first project, but you, like Amir, are a very experienced developer. What made you decide to come into EB-5?
To cut down the cost.
It's
Yes,
honest.
we raised the first project actually for Long Island City condominium, and through another regional center, and we feel that since we have quite a few projects in our pipeline, so we'd rather set up our own regional center to have better control and communications. So we're raising, right now we have 3 projects that is in our regional center are raising funds. And we have a 210 rooms holiday, 4 Points by Sheraton in Flushing. And as a mixed condo units, and then we have 100 units of condos and then 210 rooms of hotels. We also have a Holiday Inn Express in Woodside, 135 rooms. Also a 109 condo units in Jamaica. So we find that we share the same feelings from the panel. Raising the first project through our own regional center, it's challenging. But it's coming along, and for the first project, and then we have 6 people, we're close to 30 spots already filled, and we are very happy. And then we start the effort last December, and just given the time, and we are pretty happy with the progress.
Right. There was another reason that we chose these 4 panelists for you all, because you've been hearing a lot about agents and the tier level that you have in China. All 4 of our panelists today are really going out into China and not using the typical market of going out and getting tier 1 tier 1 agent and having them market, but they're trying to do it themselves. I know, Brian, that you really don't use agents. You have a very different method of going forward.
Well, we use agents, just not the big ones.
Well,
yeah.
right. Well, I'm talking about China right now, before I go out of the world.
Yeah. So our projects are typically smaller than other regional centers. Maybe our average size is 30 million, which is a lot of money, but nowadays it's relatively small. So a lot of the tier 1 agents won't even look at that. It's just not worth it for them to get educated and to learn about a project.
Right, Brian, I'm going to ask you, because they've heard this, the audience have heard this since this morning. Why are small projects, which to us 30 million is a lot of money, why is that not good for tier 1 agents?
They don't make enough money.
Why?
Because there's not why would they do 60 investors when they can do 300 investors, right?
Yeah.
So we raise money. Ooh, are you okay?
Yes, sorry.
We have a very wide reach, I would say. So we actually have 31 staff in our regional center. We're not developers, right? So we are just a regional center. 31 for a regional center is pretty big. I don't know too many other standalone regional centers that are that big. We have very international team. We have 7 Chinese. We have 1 from Russia, 1 from Venezuela, 1 from Korea, 4 from Latin America, all domestically here in DC. So we get a lot of clients from smaller agents in China, tier 2, tier 3. We get a lot of clients from immigration attorneys. We subscribe to the old-fashioned way of we're independent of the project. Developers, independent. Immigration attorney should be independent, in my view. So an immigration attorney has a client, looking for a project, they may call They may refer, not a project, but a one or two regional centers that they know well. So we get clients from a lot of different sources, and we keep the numbers pretty small, so we're able to raise it in 2 to 3 months.
Okay, for people who really are not familiar, again, I'm just talking about the China market right now. Not using a tier 1 agent means what? What are the fees for a tier 1 agent as opposed to a tier 2 agent?
Wow, tier 1.
I know it can go anywhere, but
I mean, tier 1, they're going to charge quite a few points, right? So almost the entire administrative fee, and then 3, 4, I've even seen 5%. Now we can't even afford that, right? Because we're charging that much to the developer. So we'd be out of business. So the lower tier agents are happy with the administrative fee, only maybe a little bit on the side, on the back end. So that's from my perspective.
John, I'm going to ask you the same question. I know you have your whole network in China for the Lam Group. Why don't you use tier 1 agents? Why do you prefer?
Well, we try to use your agent, but most agent, I cannot afford it.
Okay, are we having any agents sitting here in the audience?
because I have to pay back, make sure the money I could enough to pay back my investor. That's why I have a guideline, and that's why I set up my own regional center. My regional center only charge the developer 1.5%, and I pay for the investor for 0.5%. So that means the regional center only charge 1%. So that way, I make sure the developer making money and enough to pay back for the investor. And this is our specialized. I set up my own regional center. But most of the people, they look at the number. Wow, I do 1 better than I do 3. But I said, from the way I do business, I always figure for long term. Like this year, I opened 3 hotels. Only 1 hotel do EB-5. The rest hotel I use my own money. So every year we open 2, 3 hotels every year. Right now we have over 1.5 billion work to stop in constructions. But I only do about 140 million on EB-5, 2 projects. The rest I still do in-house, in my own. So that's why most of the investors, they look at our company history. They want to come knock in our door. Can I join in? So, and we have built up our own agents in China, only represent our company. And I told them, you could sleep good. You could be do for 10 years. Nobody could kick your door. Everybody finish it will be your friend. And besides that, I'm not doing just for EB-5. I do it for helping people how to invest in the United States. Because I see a lot of Chinese company invest in the United States, lost money. That's why I help a lot of companies start their business over here and help them to do for government and do for partner, let them to be, after they have a green card, they could start the company here in the United States. That's why last year, I used my own money, bring about over 20 people to China, 2 mayors from Florida, and 2 political people from New York, international commerce, and also Felix, and also 2 from Washington, D.C., to help Chinese people how to invest in United States for future without government support. So all those things, we try to build up our foundation, help them to how to start to United States for long term. And in the same time, I help them to get the green card for the student, for the children to go to school and get the green card. And also, we tie into a lot of school with the teacher, how to bring them into the major school if they could get into it. So this is the foundation we worked around. And our company, EB-5 company, we need subsidize. We have a LAM charitable fund. We donate money every year. We help them to help those people to get in to the United States to start. I'm an immigrant about 45 years ago. I know how difficult people start. That's why I said I figure out a lot of people losing money here. They should have an equal opportunity to know the country how to do, not like they do it in China, under table money. You need to work for the government. You need to work with lawyers. You need to work with the accounting to start your business. That's why we teach them how to do it, and we have a separate department to handle that. So that's the way I started my own research center. The research center not for make money. That's why I only charge 1.5% on my own project. So I make sure own project making money. So make sure enough money to pay them back in for. Even I'm not guaranteed, but the money in the project enough funding for them to have for future.
George, so John suggests, has stated that he doesn't want to pay the agents a very high fee because he wants to make sure there's money left over for the investor to pay back the investor. And I think you have a very similar kind of thought. What was your idea if you were approached tomorrow by an agent who said, "Look, I can give you all of the investors you want, but I want 5%"?
Well, I just go to the bank directly. So that's what I can potentially go to a bank and then pull out the money with about 5% interest. I don't have to go through the trouble of marketing all this thing, dealing with the agents in China, dealing with the people here. So I talk to all my agents, and we work with the smaller to mid-sized migration agent over there, and then we straightforward tell them we don't offer interest, and we can work with the administrative fees, and sometimes we have to spend the entire administrative fees. And I think in this way, it gives us enough incentive to raise money through there, and we cut down the cost on the interest side during the development.
So
Brian, I was going to say Brian, yeah.
So George, you can get 5% money for senior loan.
Senior loan.
Right.
Yeah.
So EB-5 really is
Mezz loan.
right.
Yeah,
so,
you can call it mezz loan.
Well, you can't get
for
5%
real estate
for
projects,
mezzanine.
Brian.
You cannot get it. That's why.
Sorry?
I said for real estate projects.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why we are pretty much always in the second position, right? No developer that we work with is gonna. EB-5 is so hard, right? It's so complicated. We sign an agreement with the developer, and they say, okay, how much money do you have? And we say 0, right? Every project is a standalone project. We have to go raise it. So why would they do that when they can go to a bank and get a similar interest rate for their senior loan? So EB-5 is really relevant in that second piece, right? When the pref or the mezz is 12%. Right?
Well, our capital stack structure is, for myself, I'm already having about 37 to 38% already. So the rest of the money is coming a senior loan plus EB-5. So I'm in a better position than a lot of the developers, and they actually trim down their own investment.
Mm-hmm. I think that also that we have to look at the deal and to do it in a healthy way. So to take just to raise money and spend commissions or fees or whatever, it's maybe doable for the first project or one project, but if you're not returning the money back to your investors, so it will be one story, one time. And if you want to create a track record, you cannot take upon yourself commitments that will kill your project.
That's correct. John, I know you have successful projects who've already got the green cards. And Brian, I know your regional center not only have green cards, but you've actually returned capital in some projects, correct?
Yep.
But those were the smaller projects.
Yeah. The last one we returned was the second one. It's a large City Market O Street in Washington, D.C. It's a very large project. We were a very small piece in it. But we returned money last year in full to all the investors, 10 investors in that piece. Yeah.
And on that project, did you have agents? Did you have high-paying agents?
No, that was 2008, 2009. So that was before, the whole agent industry exploded. So we had a couple of small agents. We had clients from attorneys. It was more of you find investors everywhere you can find them. It wasn't a mass production.
Well, to be very fair to agents as well, the costs were less back in those days. The costs now are much, much more because there's so much more competition. So agents in China, they're all running after the same investor, so they have to spend more. And I think that's really what's ended up pushing up the fees.
Right.
So it's just a cost of the EB-5 program being so popular. So here we have somebody who's new and they want to go in and find capital. How do they do it? Amir, how did you start? George, how did you start?
Well, you're talking about how to...
How do you go out and actually start finding agents, for example, even if they're second-tier agents?
Yeah, we actually by referrals. We work with immigration attorneys, and we get recommendations by some of the agents, and also we have some contacts in China, and I let them do some research, some of the get some numbers of the agents, and I start talking to them, and I find the comfort levels of how much fees they are charging, all this, and then so eventually we work with them.
Well, you have the advantage of language. Amir, I don't think you speak Chinese, right?
No, not yet. I'm trying to work on it. But, yes, exactly. But we are talking about EB-5, and it's like there is China and there is the rest of the world.
Right.
So it's
I'm getting
like
to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
I'm
So
talking China first.
China, it's everything is agent. The market is very educated. I cannot give something to this market. I can participate. I can try to do my best. We are going to events, creating
How did you first go to China, though? That's what the question is.
Besides the plan.
No.
No, we started with you, with relationship, with local relationship. Then we take the next step. We will go to events. We are trying to become like more established in the events and to show ourselves that we are coming, repeating, doing, getting familiar with more people.
Right. So basically what I'm trying to get at for new developers here is that initially you would have to spend, when you talk about marketing money, you have to spend money on travel and going to conferences and events, correct?
100%.
Right.
You have to be there. It's a relationship. It has to be consistent. People want to see you. You want to know also where is your project. Like, I know that regional center is very nice, but at the end of the day, if he's publishing a few or working on a few projects, you don't really know where are you. As you said, we are starting with zero every time.
Right.
So it's like you want at least to measure yourself.
Right. Okay, so China aside, there's the rest of the world. I know, John, you have people in your projects from other countries, from Germany and India. How did these investors come to you?
A lot of they see the website, or they refer from other peoples, and most of the people they are Chinese in Russia or other area. So from that area, people direct call us. I always refer to China agent to taking care of them because I don't know how to do those paperwork. So in Russia or other even Europe, the background check is most important. So I'm afraid to take some money and I don't get clear the background check. I put myself in trouble. That's why a lot of those people come in, I don't see it clearly. I always send to the bank, check it out. But my bank very strict. They have make sure that every penny they come in before they take the money. Not like you wire the money, then welcome. They have to prove first before they let you wire the money for them. So I let them check into it, and they the lawyer check into it. If the money okay before I let them sign the paperwork, I will accept them. I think the only one doing that they are this way, and we are looking for after doing 1 or 2 successful, I will make him become an agent. He represent for me in that country to go through my policy to build up slowly. So we're already getting 2 countries start very, very good, like Mexico, and Vietnam. So those people, they do our project, and I told them, you feel comfortable with it, then you set up your own team. We make you become an agent to expand it out, and you're successful already. So you should have a business development in there. So that's the kind of relationship I spread it out, not counting in China. So I think that way, for long run, we could have an agent overall. They all my clients. They all be EB-5 before, and they have that experience, and it's much easier for them to explain to people. I will get it, and you should join with it. I think that's the only way you build up your foundation. Even in China, all my agents are built up from the scratch. And the people I worked for them before, and they get their green card, and the company not doing for EB-5, not an agent, but a separate department to help me to do that. And that's how we build up our network in overall.
Thank you. Brian, we were in Moscow just last week, and there was nobody else there and except somebody from your regional center. It's like wherever we go, we bump into someone from your regional center. So how do you actually go out into these other markets like the Russian markets, and how do you find them?
Yeah. So you have to have native speakers for pretty much every market you want to touch, in my opinion. Except the Indian market, I would say. You don't need a native Indian. So Vietnam and Korea are the only other countries, aside from China, that there's actually an agent model that I've seen. There's immigration agencies there. They charge commissions.
Well, it's very new in Vietnam, the agencies. Yeah. There are still plenty of individuals who are coming, but there's the language barrier.
Sure.
Yeah.
Russia is totally just, Mona's referring to Natalia, who works for us, and she travels to Moscow every few months, and there's some events and conferences, and she goes down to Miami. There's a lot of Russian speakers down there, and she just tries to network and piece together and really grind it out. For Russia, Latin America, similar. I haven't come across specific agents there. It's all networking, events, finding people in Latin America who have access to high net worth clients who want to make referrals. So it's a lot of legwork, I would say.
Right. I think it's fair to say that overall there's either countries which have agents or intermediaries, and the intermediaries could be banks, it could be lawyers, could be CPA firms.
Real estate agents,
correct. Amir, I know you've been looking into the Israeli market. How are you finding the Israeli market?
So first of all, I'm trying to work on few different markets beside Israel, which you're right. But the thing is, if I said before that there is China, there is the rest of the world. So China is an educated market. Rest of the world is a completely different question. You need to present your
completely uneducated.
Exactly. So your sources and your efforts in the rest of the world, if you ask me now, is to explain what is it EB-5. How do you do it? You need to educate them. While in China, you will spend most of your money on marketing because you want to push your project. Rest of all, you need to educate it. Then if you go to the rest of the world, which the world is pretty big, you need to be focused. You need to choose 1 or 2, 3 countries that you think that you have some more strengths. Whether I'm from Israel or whether my mentality is different or the time I don't know what, but all your networks, you need to do the adjustment to this market and to understand how do you approach it.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah.
I would say that, so China, you said educated market, right? They get EB-5, Vietnam a little more. But the level of due diligence that a Russian or an Indian investor gives to you is incredible. Sometimes it's not even worth it to spend all that time with one single Indian investor, because they ask a lot of questions, right? They want to see the project. They fly over here. They Russian investors want to analyze every single clause in your offering documents. It's a good thing, but you really need a staff and you need time and resources to source that. Whereas Chinese investors, it's a little less of that.
George, you've had non-Chinese investors approach you also. Have you had the same experience that they do take a lot more effort?
Yeah, for education part of it. Yes, we do have part of our team reach out to Vietnam, Hong Kong market, and we also have some other team members and reach out to Korea and the Japanese market. I know Japanese is a very small market there. For the other these markets, and then you spend a lot of time of educating them and then tell them the process and all this ins and outs in this entire process, as opposed, just like Brian said, that the Chinese are getting a lot more sophisticated, and then they look at everything, capital stacks, and then your maybe some construction plans. And then I have one investor was asking me, and then did you get the plan approved? So before construction. So I think they're getting a lot more sophisticated. So I think the other markets.
I think the Indian market is quite sophisticated, actually. That's
we
why they ask more questions.
we haven't reached to India market yet, because I think partly because of the language, you have to find somebody who speaks that language.
No, actually, I disagree.
You don't need.
No. India's one. Yeah.
I think that when you're working with investor, yes, with the places that there is no agent, yes, he's more sophisticated. He will ask you more questions, but at the end of the day, usually they will bring few friends of them. Like you are.
True.
When you finish with one, he will bring another 4 or 5 friends. And so actually, you're doing one work for 4 or 5. If you're saving cost, so you have more efforts, but that's the cost.
Right.
Yeah, agreed. George, do you find that being a Chinese speaker, that if you had, say, an Indian investor or some other investor from another country, that there's any feelings that perhaps they shouldn't go into a Chinese project, that they should go into a project which is run by an American? I mean, what I'm trying to ask is, have you ever felt any bias?
I mean, so far we have most of our investors, almost all of the investors sign up with us are Chinese. So they don't have any issues with us. And obviously, if they are coming to our office or to the job site and then ask us to explain the project to them, and then they already passed that stage already. Otherwise, they won't be there. So far, I feel pretty good about it.
That's the experience I think we have had, that investors are not, they don't particularly need to go to a Chinese regional center or a non-Chinese regional center. They do look at the project.
Right.
So when you are talking with investors, this is open to all the panel, what do you do if you have a direct investor? Do you invite them to come to the project, or do you just send out a native speaker? How do you proceed forward?
I can start. So you mean a direct phone call or email inquiry? Yeah,
which are happening more and more.
Yeah. So we have a robust website. We have a team in our office in DC that handles this. We invite them to our office. Most of our projects are in DC, so it's quite easy for us to tour them around. It gets difficult when our 14th project was in Portland, Oregon. Can't really tour them around too much, and we don't typically let our developer partner and our investors ever touch. We try to keep a wall between that.
Why?
Yeah, this was my next issue.
just control of message, right?
Well,
and
Brian, you're going to defend yourself now. You have 3 people on the panel with you who are developers with their own regional centers.
Well, if I'm a developer in my own regional center, it's me and myself, right?
Right.
So you can't get around that. But these are our clients, right? So in my world, the clients are not the developers' clients, right? Yes. So their job is to build the project. Our job is to handle our investors. And I've always kept a very fine line between that. I mean, once in a while we'll do a tour with them, But then the investors start asking the developer. They don't know the difference, right? So they'll ask the developer about, I don't know, retrogression or about administrative fees, and developer doesn't know what to say. So we just keep it separate.
John, why would you not use a third-party regional center? Why would you have your own regional center?
Before I start my own regional center, I did call a couple of regional center talk to me, and they give me the number, the cost me much more than the bank loan me the money. I remember 2011, at that time I said, maybe I use a regional center, the bank doesn't loan a lot of money, the bank tied it up. I called a couple regional center coming in, they asked me 8% interest. The bank only charged me 3.5%. So why I pay 8% for? So don't make sense. So I figure I cannot afford to pay that kind of money. And I said, who can have a customer for you? He said, plenty of people, they will line up for them to do it. I said, not for me. Then I figured out I have to start my own regional center. That's why I only charge me 1.5%. So when I first marketing, and people doesn't know me in China, people doesn't know me in other countries. I called all the banks. Also, I have my own bank too. So I called the bank association, go with me together to China, hold up a private banking. So every location I go in, the private banking help me to set up all the private customer. So when I talk to them, and the bank department, they all know my balance sheet. They highly recommend. That's why soon the bank highly recommend, majority the customer, they all feel comfortable. They just ask me question, experience. They told them I have no experience in that side, but I hire all the best lawyer to taking care of that. And beside that, my firm have an internal lawyer working in my own firm. So all the legal document, my internal lawyer reviewed it, and immigrant lawyer prepared it, and before we send out, and they follow the rule, follow the law, to do it, and I find very successful. Every time when you go with the private banking, the client come in, they don't ask you a lot of questions, and most of the client, they have no problem for funding, but they all have heavy funding into it. So, but you have to make the bank feel comfortable to present for your project. And most I talk to them, and they see to our project, they see to our history, and we have right now, I think over 30% my client from the private banking department sent to me, not agents, private banking.
George, why would you not go with a third-party regional center? Why have you decided to have your own regional center?
We find that I think it's the interest rate they're charging, and if I go with the other regional centers, minimum starts at used to be 2-3%. Right now it's go to 6%, and then
I don't think it was ever 2-3%. Right, Brian?
Actually, I started. I heard that 2-3%, but even though my first project is somewhere about 4%, so it just defeats the purpose for me to go to the regional center, go to other regional centers to get that, so I can just get the entire senior loan to cover the project.
Yeah, and Amar, I think you have the same point, right?
I have that. We started by ourselves also, but to be honest, I don't know if we are trying to do it mainly because I want to learn exactly how the system works. At the end of the day, I think time is money, and if I will learn it, I need to put more efforts, and then money will come in a long period of time. So maybe it was a mistake, and it's better to have a regional center. I cannot judge now why and what is better. I just can say why we started in this way, and it's because I want to know exactly what even the questions of the EB-5 investors.
Okay, right. We're getting to the end of the panel, so I'm going to ask each panel member to give a few words of advice for any developers starting up out there. Any hidden agents lurking behind the pillars? So I'll start with you, George.
Well, if I had a chance to go back in time, I probably would like to enter the market earlier, So just like John said, that if you have a long history of track record, successful projects, raising money through EB-5, and then you probably will do better compared to the others just entering the market. So it's never too late, but it's definitely it's a lot more competitive right now. So, but still, I mean, EB-5 it's here for the long run, even though September 30th is coming up.
Yeah,
but
I agree. And there's still room for people, even though the last panel didn't think there was any room for any more.
Yes,
It
hopefully.
depends who you ask. It's always like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully Congress is gonna raise the number of investors per year, so that which can reduce the amount of wait time and then for the 526.
Brian?
So if I had to do it all over again, is that essentially the question?
Yes, or if you have any words of wisdom, pearls of wisdom.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing your first project, I would pick a good project that will sell and start small, right? Don't try to raise $400 million on your first try. I would work with a regional center that has a long track record, at least to get the first 1 or 2 or 3 done successfully under your belt. And then if you want to go out and get your own center and start trying to save more cost, that might be easier. I think it's, especially you have guys like me in China railing against developer regional centers, so it might be better to do it the other way first.
Amir?
I agree about the type of the project. I assume that the location is very important, and I think that we need to add something is maybe the time to go to market. So you should, we are developers, so we are always seeking for money, but if you can go to the one and start with EB-5 while you are not under pressure of equity or alone, it will be a big advantage.
And John, do you have any words of wisdom for any new developer?
Well, any question?
Yeah.
You would say don't start.
If we have a developer in the audience and they want, what words of advice do you have? Or if you could go back in time, what would you change?
Well, I think even go back, I think I still go do the same way. More control by your own hand, and let the customer see too more clearly your project, how you run it, how you operate it. And our company, especially in hotel, our company do for real estate over 30 years. In hotel, we are #1 builder in New York City, and we are the #1 owner in New York City. And we are #1 management in the New York City, plus we are number 18 in the top in the countries. So we are top 18 in the countries. So people, when they see that, they see the value what you do, and feel comfortable to join in. That's why I think I get enough value to put new people to start their own business, open their own agent firm, directly 100%. Push our project instead of one agent. I went to before. They issue our project, put on the website. So when people come in to work on my project, this project sold out. I give you a different project. And I learned that experience. I said no more. Because I asked them why to do that. They said you're too cheap. so and I figure in that situation. Only agent, if they 100% represent my project, then I let them do it. If they represent the other project, then I'm not going to do it. I'd rather build up their own agent instead of issue a project and not selling your project. And that's getting more damage in that way. So that's why even I start the same way.
Well, thank you. Thank you to our panelists, George, Brian, Amir, John. Thank you very much. Thank you to you all, and I would ask you, we're going to start the next panel in just a few minutes. This is an excellent panel. Please do stay for it. Oh, I'm sorry. I had to leave 5 minutes for questions. Sorry. Yes.
I have a question directed at Mr. Brian Oster. Oster. Excuse me, apology. Since you've been in this business 2008, and obviously very successful, And a little bit overlap since the last panel about fund redeployment. Can you share with us what you do with the money?
Well, we
After
have,
the good income?
I mean, it's a good question, and it actually relates to this panel.
And obviously, because your structure is a lot different
Well,
than
we
the
have
rest
had
of the
some
county.
developers who had offers to sell, and we had the right to say no,
To sell what?
their property.
Their property.
Right, so we had a hotel built in San Jose, California, two Marriott hotels, a dual Marriott project. As soon as it opened, they got a big offer. Now that goes back to if you own the project and you're also the partnership, you kind of have a conflict there, right? Do you sell it and possibly mess up investors' immigration, or do you not sell it? Right, so we had the right, in our documents, we have that kind of major decision right, so we said no. So we haven't reached a point yet where we had an exit coming with investors who were not approved under 829s. We will, soon, but all of our projects that will exit, they already have 829s all approved, as of now. So we haven't reached that point
But
yet.
since 2018, and you just said that you returned the first 20
2008,
investors. I'm
yeah.
sorry, 2008.
But there was no issue of retrogression back then,
Okay.
right? So that was I think Julia or someone else on your
Yes.
panel. That was it's a 5-year term, and immigration is a 5-year plan, so it kind of matched up. And actually another point, senior loans are usually 5 years, right? 311 or a construction loan.
Yeah, we
3
actually
years.
return the money when the construction's over.
What I'm saying is everything's coterminous, right? So at 5 years, your construction loan's due, your 829s are approved, and EB-5 is due. So you have a big exit, right? Everyone's happy. That was before. Now it's going to be 7-8 years. We don't have a project that has reached that point yet where we face
So
that.
what is your structure right now for, that's imminent, that's coming up?
It's exactly what Clem and others said in the last panel. We have defeasance language in our documents. We have alternate investment language in our documents. It's pretty much as vague as possible. And we have Securities Counsel that writes it, and we have Immigration Counsel, and it pretty much says we will do anything that is necessary to protect your immigration. That's it.
Yes, no question.
Yeah, in the last 6 months, the construction loan
Do
market.
you mind just standing at the mic, please? Thank you. Just that so everybody can hear. Thank you.
Yeah, in the last 6 months, the construction loan market has kind of really tightened up. So it's great if it's an alternative, EB-5 is an alternative to bank lending. But if you're only getting 60% LTC, I'm wondering, have you guys been successful at all in mixing EB-5 with other like mezz or preferred equity? Potentially the banks don't like that. To mix with that.
I haven't. Within my capital stack, it's a senior loan and the EB-5. I did not mix with mezz loans. Mezz loans, they have to take the second position if you have a senior loan.
John, do you have such an example, mixing the two loans?
We don't have that kind of problem. Most of the banks work with me for like 30 years. They know our history, what money I need. They all come in. Just like the first two projects I do, the Virgin, we have one bank loan me over $250 million. So a lot of people said, well, can you do tie up? No bank will let more than 30 million or 50 million. So, but in one project, one bank give $250 million. So the project appraisal over $350 million. So, but my cost only $400 million. So for them it's very safe. So the bank are looking at who's the client. They have enough experience. So we don't never deal with mezzanine loan. The mezzanine loan, they take your stock to Colorado. So soon you didn't pay on time, you don't have the company anymore. They take away. So the bank, they will take over, and the EB-5 probably could lose all the money. So that's why we don't deal with mezzanine loan. we only do regular loan and EB-5. And when we need more money, we always get into Goldman Sachs. So Goldman Sachs is very good relationship with us. So one of the loan just closed over $100 million. We have one project in Harlem. So we have 200 hotels and 200 apartments. So when we get to Goldman Sachs, no problem. Your cost is so low, I give you up to 90% financing. I said, I don't need that. I have EB-5, so reduce the loan and I put EB-5 into it. So that's the way we deal with them. So even today, a lot of land getting into trouble for financing for constructions. Our company get a lot of phone call to want joint venture partnership, so to take over their project. So, but my course, I always figure you overpay doesn't mean I have to overpay to partnership with you. I only pay for that amount on my land. If you over that number, I'm not going to look at it. If you feel that number fit into my project, any time I will take more project come in. So that's the way we work it and for it. So that's why the bank very comfortable to deal with us. For the past 40 years, I see New York market. I'm going to do real estate most in New York. All my project in Manhattan. I see the bank up and down. Even in the worst time, a lot of people told me, you cut the bank half the loan. We have no choice. I always sit down with the bank. I said, we will pay you full, but work with us together. So that's why the bank will get very comfortable work with us. Doesn't matter good and bad. Even in September 11, nobody built hotel. The bank said no, not build hotel. We have all the hotel built in September 11 and after September 11. Even in 2008, the bank not financing. We still putting our project building at that time. So, but not like right now. We build 1 million square feet. At that time, we build one project at a time. So, the relationship with the bank is very important.
Julia, you had a question, I think.
Oh, actually, yes. Very quick.
Yes.
So, because I think it's kind of unfair. 3 developers and 1 third-party regional.
Yeah, but he can handle it.
I just wanted to clarify one thing that Brian was talking about, that you create a wall between the investors and the developers, and I think that came across a little. I think there was a little bit of misunderstanding. The thing is, as a third-party regional center, we're like a bank. We're the lender. Our developers are our borrowers. You know how many phone calls you have, emails, WeChat. There's just so much hand-holding in EB-5. And if you're paying me as a developer 6-7% to get this money for you, the last thing you want to be doing is walking around the project with all these potential investors.
And agents.
Or agents, and that's what Brian means. So, we're kind of like Deutsche Bank, and if we lend it to a borrower and we're syndicating this loan to 12 smaller banks, our role is to aggregate those loans and give it to the borrower. So I think what Brian meant was not that he's trying to control information so that the investors can't talk to the developers. He's saying that as a third-party regional center, that's what we do. We explain things, and if an investor says, but I want to sit down with the developer because they're the builders, of course we'll arrange it. But if the regional center does a good enough job, then the investors don't need to do that. We take them to the project site, they'll take a look at the developer's office and all that. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Julia, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
We approach different banks, and then some of the banks say that, hey, you are involved in EB-5. I'm not interested. We don't understand EB-5. How do we tell this kind of banks, and then so how,
I'll be very honest, in our deals, the senior lender oftentimes is not a bank. There are private lenders. There are only a handful of banks that will really do senior lending on an EB-5 deal when EB-5 comes in as mezz. But that's because our deals are, we're a mid-sized market kind of. I think Brian's regional center Brian's been around longer, but our deals are not like $100 million deals. Our deals are smaller.
Well, we do preferred equity partly because
and the workaround is pref, but we definitely prefer
If you do have a regular bank, and then they're taking the first position. How do you deal with your EB-5 funding? Are you taking a second position, or how
We're
do you?
taking a second position either in preferred equity or as a mezz debt.
Oh, okay.
And Julie,
Thank
you
you.
tend to do mostly real estate, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any last questions? Yes?
Yeah, I just had a question.
Sorry, last panel. We're getting to this. Yeah, no, sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just wanted to know more about like the like we've seen from the other panels like the intertwining between politics and development, and I hope that's like not a thorny question, but I wanted to ask George about so I'm a resident of Flushing, and I've been going out to like these community meetings. You know, I've been speaking with the community groups. I spoke to the local councilman about the rezoning surrounding Flushing, and from my perspective, they were all, you know, let's go, go, go. We're all for it. And then recently they announced that the rezoning was axed, and I wanted to ask about, you know, from your perspective, why did that happen if we were all for it? You know, the community had leverage to get the needs that they wanted to get done for it, but it seems that the local government, they said it was an environmental issue, but a month before they were, you know, let's get it done, and I just wanted to know some perspective on that.
Yeah, that rezoning was rejected. I think, to my understanding, some people were talking about, I think it's affordable housing and components, and then the Councilman Peter Koo was not very comfortable with that. That was the main reason, and he asked that rezone.
Thank you. Any last question? All right. Well, again, thank you, panelists. Thank you very much, audience. Thank you.
Thank you.